Mm-hmm. 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 Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be.
When you get the family together, the community could be better. And the family is not necessarily always perfect. You know, that's there's no such thing as a perfect family, but the family that just worked together. And I remember back in the day, coming up, my grandmother used to send me around the neighborhood to have groceries. So basically, my grandmother used to get, of course, groceries from the food bank, but she get bags of these things. And I always remember she would get all the bags together, get all the cans together, whatever she's getting together, get all that food together, and then she'll tell me go to so and so house. And when we get done, go drop this off at so and so house. And then go take this. And next thing you know, I'm delivering 2 or 3, 4 houses. But I know I'm like, Dad, Grandma, you delivering back to a lot of people. But when I look back at it now, I understand what she was doing. She was doing her part in the community. She wasn't an activist. Uh, she wasn't a model. She didn't own a business. Um, she wasn't necessarily, you know, uh, a big person on TV. The biggest thing is she just did her part in her community. Um, and not perfect, no, but I just remember, whatever she had, she shared. That was the thing. Whatever she had, she shared. But she will always make sure that she have enough for her family. And whatever extra she had, she will break down with others. And I think that right there is a core value that we have lost in our community. We've lost that within our families, and we lost that amongst each other. So I think when we go back and look at how we just treat another individual, a lot of us has lost, you know, self-respect for others. I mean, you walk in the store nowadays, very few people hold the door. I mean, somebody walk in the door, they ain't thinking about you, the door. Back in the day, people used to hold the door. Something simple like that, just a simple gesture could make the difference in someone's day. But a lot of us just don't do the simple things. And I mean, of course, it's the times. Everybody is moving, at a pace. Sometimes some people may not do it on purpose. Sometimes we have a lot on our mind and we're just moving. And, there's those things. But I think a lot of the core values has left because of our own agendas, our own selfish agendas. Um, we don't care to share anymore. People are more selfish. Uh, People are just more thinking about themselves. So I think when you have these things in place, that hurts the family because again, everybody has their own individual choices. And when you look at life, when you really break down life, it's true what a lot of us heard years ago. You are where you are in life today based on a compound effect of all the decisions you have made. So when you go back and you look at your life, you got to think about what decisions have you made personally. And I look back and whether they're good or bad, it's not to say someone's better than the other. It's not to say someone is doing more well than the other or somebody has more than the other. Has nothing to necessarily do with that. It's just to kind of reflect on life itself and to look back and say, hey, You know, these were some of the decisions I made, whether it was good, whether it was bad, whether they had positive outcomes or negative outcomes. At the end of the day, they still was decisions. And when we look back at our decisions, you know, I was just talking, you know, like I said, we talked to another, I was talking to another brother of mine about this. And then the first thing he says, not only did a lot of the people from his generation had came from broken homes, but it seems like the people after his generation, of course, is even more broken. And so, you know, a lot of times when we, you know, that's why I agree with it saying the family and the community, because when you have a strong community, whatever situation comes to a family, that community comes together to support that family. Um, Atmosphere is important. Um, I mean, of course, there's a lot of things that are taking place to, you know, what makes that decision. But again, it's still a decision. And so, you know, looking at the family core values today and what we have, you know, and of course, you know, jobs, a lot of us got to pay bills. So you got a lot of jobs, you know, so a lot of times, you know, hours may fluctuate of, you know, people being in a household and, you know, you got your kids, you know, children are now spending more hours in school. Children now has, you know, more extracurricular activities. So you don't, you know, I guess, you know, how often or how much time does a family spend together in the household? So that's why it's very important to get those value times to maybe walk in the park or go on something simple as going on vacation. Um, Maybe going to a movie together as a family. You know, that, you know, little things like that helps out a lot because, you know, sometimes when you're moving through the world, you know, we can lose sight of the little things. Um, because we're trying to make a lot of things happen at one time. And a lot of times, you know, and that's just being a human being, you know, again, you know, has nothing to do with necessarily color, you know, just imperfect creatures. But we understand that family is important because without families, communities cannot be created. So before a community can be created, it first must has families, people, bodies of people, and how they treat each other, how they move amongst each other is very important. And just looking at how when like just little things like how my grandmother used to, you know, have me go around and deliver groceries or just whatever food she had available to some of the other neighbors in the community, that was just, you know, a really big thing. That was like teaching me at a young age a form of community service. You know, a form of, okay, um, I may not have a lot of money, but whatever the little bit I do have, I'm willing to share. If everyone did that, where would we be? If if everyone now what I'm saying is that, you know, I don't want most people to take like, okay, you just you just, you know, open up the you know, the wealth well and start sharing everything and no, that ain't what I'm saying. No. It's just use your better judgment, right? You know, we understand that people ain't perfect, but sometimes sharing a meal, uh, you know, like I say, it don't necessarily have to be food. It can be clothing. Uh, It don't necessarily have to be a material thing when you share it. It can be your time. You can lend your talents. Um, Maybe just give advice. That can do a lot. Something you can say to somebody can really change how someone feel in the day. And, that can really, make the difference. So, sharing is not necessarily a material thing, but it can be your time. Um, or sometimes your talents, depending on the situation. So I just look back at going back to, like you said, it's very important to make sure you have your family, your finances, and to understand, when we do look at religion, right, it does cause a separation because, you know, people go into different buildings to learn certain things. But, at the end of the day, you know, that that still shouldn't stop a person from working together, because we see other nations that may have different religions too, but they can still work together because they understand the bigger meaning. And a lot of times, fear, we don't talk enough about fear. Fear is what holds a lot of us back. False evidence appearing real. And a lot of times fear, when you have a fear of something, it may be, I'm not saying all the time. I'm definitely not saying all the time. But in some cases, fear could be lack of understanding of something. So when you have a lack of understanding of something, because maybe the teacher or the mentor may not have broke it down to a point where you can understand it, then there's going to be some things that naturally, as human beings, we're going to start to question. So we question things not necessarily, based because we don't want to do something. We question things because, one, it may have fear. We may be afraid of what could come through if I do this thing. Or I may be afraid of success. Sometimes people are afraid of marriage. Sometimes people are afraid of having children. So sometimes we go back. We have to cling on to teachings. Who are our mentors? And if we don't necessarily, like Mr. Shalon said, he didn't have his father. But at the end of the day, he knew that, okay, if I had a friend that I'm close to, if he had a dad, I'm going over there. Because now he's learning from what may not be in his home, but he was able to position himself in a place where he could learn the traits of a father or traits of a man, whatever the case may be. See, when you have a strong community, there may not be a man in a household, but when you have a strong community, there's other men in that community that can help raise that child. And God talks about this in the Bible, but a lot of times, again, when we have no understanding, there is fear. And when there's fear, you're going to be on the defense all the time. And you're going to be a person of pushback when we don't have no understanding. So the financial part, Mr. G was talking about, huge. These are some big pointers that was made today, a huge pointers about where we stand and our mindset. And just moving forward, I believe that whenever you are faced with problems, I think again, I'm talking from another point that don't necessarily have to do with color, but I think as people, I think a lot of times we focus more on the problem than not the solution. See, there's always a solution to things, and it may not be the solution that you're looking for, but it's a solution. It may not bring rectification right away at a time that you want it, but it's a better decision. And sometimes when we make decisions, a lot of times it's based on how much do we understand of the situation. Maybe, and I'm not saying that, a person don't have a clear-cut understanding. What I'm saying is that whatever the situation is, we're going to make a decision.
Yeah. Don't change